How can we reach you?
So you can reach me on 070 3077.
Call it again gently.
070
Mm-hmm.
10
Mm-hmm.
3077.
Thank you. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Your name or where you calling us from?
My name is Pastor Olajujo.
Okay.
I am a photographer. My professor name is Estima Photo. I cover wedding photo shoot, studio and family picture. I do photo book and different set of things. You can call me on WhatsApp 090 96 33 92 90.
Thank you. Signals Marketplace. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
This favor calling from Iju Shagal. We are a cleaning company, a clean tech. We deal with cleaning houses, apartments, new and old, and our WhatsApp number is 07042789315.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. Hello. One more call, 0704 700 9913. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Hello, good morning, Mrs. Okay.
Your name or where you calling us from?
Yeah, my name is Henry. I'm calling from Lakeshore Island.
What's Henry selling?
Yes, we have all kinds of cameras, studios, all kinds of events, and all kinds of birthday parties and celebrities.
So how can we reach you?
Yeah, 070 359 373.
And that's it for Signals Marketplace. We'll be right back. Please don't go anywhere.
Signals served on Lagos Talks 91.3 every Saturday at 10 a.m. Your mind will dream again.
Oh, what did happen now?
Down to help the entire world. So, I have to take it in. I'll be glad. Okay then, we're ready to go with you. So I've been struggling to, how do I say, do I say former governorship aspirants? Or do I use your, that's what I've been struggling with.
Former governorship candidate.
Yep. It's alright. It's time to speak English.
That's fine.
Okay then. Welcome back to Signals on 91.3. Signals Marketplace is over, so we continue next week Saturday. This time around, we'll be looking at, before I start, very special thanks to Diary Babatunde for making this happen, because he had to send me a message at 4 a.m. Diary, it's you. We're discussing redefining public accountability. And I have with me someone who campaigned for the office of governorship of Lagos State in 2023. And he came forth. He remains actively involved in politics and is now a member of the People's Democratic Party. Between 2014 and 2017, he partnered with the African Capital Alliance Group after the buyout of their joint venture partners' interests in Value Alliance Asset Management Company, formerly Sim Capital Alliance. He served as the managing director and CEO and was a co-investor. In 2017, he was nominated by the then acting president to the office of the Director General of the National Pension Commission, together with a new slate of commissioners. These appointments were, however, never concluded or advanced to the Senate for confirmation proceedings. In 2022, he completed his tenure as the Managing Director CEO of Power Pensions, where he led a nationwide team overseeing the management of over 500 billion naira in assets. is the charter holder and the co-founding trustee of the Chartered Financial Analyst Society Nigeria and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. I have with me Funsho Doherty. Right. Welcome to Signals.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So it's quite interesting when you think about somebody from afar and then the person lands, your thoughts comes to life. That's what's happening to me right now. So
I hope the reality is matching the
reality. Don't have a choice. So we have to do. So we're discussing redefining public accountability, and there's something with Nigeria. I was in a car with a friend of mine, and we're discussing the anyhowness of Nigerian. What do you think about it?
Well, I think, well, first of all, the fact that we have a word like anyhowness suggests that we ourselves understand that
We are anyhow.
we are anyhow, right?
Okay.
And so this general trend towards, ignoring rules and, thinking that rules are just there, not necessarily to be followed, but only to be followed by some. And if we can get around the rules, we should get around them and so on. I think it's unfortunately a feature of our society. And I think that I see that this is more so of recent than, for example, when I was growing up. That's my sense of it. The only other thing I would add is to say that, I think that the people are really following their leaders, right? Because these things come from the top and make their way all the way down. Rules are made not just for the followers, but also for the leaders. But if the leaders are evidently not following the rules, then, the followers feel morally justified to not follow the rules. So it becomes a vicious cycle, really.
So we're discussing public accountability. Are we really accountable? In an era where you can't question your leaders, in an era where the culture is more stronger than you asking your leader that, guy, what have you done?
Yeah, so I think that we have a lot to learn in terms of accountability. Maybe part of it is because we spent a lot of our time under military rule.
Okay.
But this idea that, the leader is a ruler, and that word ruler is actually a wrong term in the kind of democratic setting that we are operating, right? The leader is a servant leader, and does not rule over you, but he administers on your behalf in trust for you. And until we get that into our consciousness as a people, and realize that, it is in our power to hold people accountable, to hold our leaders accountable, I think, impunity will continue to reign. By the way, I should say that this is not something that is new or peculiar to Nigeria. It's actually a feature of human societies going back into history. Leaders will generally seek to push the bounds of their power, the bounds of their authority, and it is up to the people when that push is too far for them to push back. And this is how societies find a balance that is appropriate for them. And that's how the whole practice of democracy in the first place developed, because you had kings who had absolute authority. But as the people agitated, they now started having assemblies, which is where the people would have an organ that represents their own voice in the affairs of state. And fast forward many hundreds of years is the democratic system that we're operating today. So I would say that we have a lot of ground to cover in terms of accountability. The leaders need to be more accountable to the people. But I would also add very strongly that the people need to be more demanding of the accountability, because the leaders will not necessarily, give it up willingly.
So do we take it by force, or do we, how do we ensure that there's a balance?
Yeah. So you take it really is by force, but not force of, of the gun, right? It's force of insistence, right? That we want people to be accountable, and we're seeing some of it, but I think we need to see a lot more. I would say, objectively, as I view the society over the last maybe 3-4 years, I see a lot more pushback in the public space, maybe driven by social media, maybe driven by the increased awareness and information flow associated with technology, that people are pushing back, right? So sometimes you lose in the courts, but you also have power to exert in the court of public opinion. And so, while we've seen some green shoots there, we do have a lot more ground to cover. I think that the greatest weapon that we have is the awareness of the people, and the people themselves rising and lending their voice. We've had this situation in the past where we've always had people who have championed this case. If you think about the likes of the Ganifa enemies of this world, the Bekor and some Kutis of this world.
And going back.
They've always stood up and said things, right? But they've seemed to be lone voices, right? They are not they are not broken into sort of the mass. But I think more so now with social media, with technology, with the voice on the internet, we're seeing more of that. And I think we'll see more of that. Most importantly, where the people's voices have to speak loudest in a democracy, and I cannot stress this too much. Where the people's voices have to speak loudest is when it comes to time to select their leaders.
When do we begin to select the leaders? When?
Every 4 years we go and do elections, don't we?
Before the 4 years of it, because we're going into another election cycle. Okay.
So every 4 years we go into elections. So what it means is that from one election to another election, you have 4 years. It's not in the 6 months before the election that, because that's the way we operate, right? So when election is coming out, you see the whole atmosphere will be different. It will be like jamboree atmosphere. There will be, it's like a carnival atmosphere. But really, this 4-year period is a period, one, for people to hold government accountable, the opposition leaders, to also be making their own, holding, those that are in power to account, calling them out where the need arises. People also have to be observant and be drawing their own conclusions. And at the end of the day, in 4 years' time, 2 years now, because we have spent 2 years, they will be faced with a choice. And they will have to make a choice at that stage. And you see, there's just no getting around it. In a democracy, the only way to change the government is to vote the government out. That's the only way. There's no other way. There's no other way. This is not military. There's no other way. So the sooner we realize that, and just know that, if you don't exercise that power of revolution on the day of election, not revolution of, mouth or resolution of social media or whatever. If you want to revolt on voting day. Come out and exercise your revolution on the day of voting. And by the way, and I know because I know where you're going. By the way, the next thing people will tell you is that, well, do our votes count and this and that and the other.
It's not that do our vote counts. It's when we get to the voting centers and we're a bit beaten away. Yes. What do we do?
No, so look.
And where I was going to.
Well, yeah, these are all things. But, what you want and is yours, that you are being deprived of, if somebody is not going to give it up willingly, will you go home and say, okay, thank you very much, I tried?
The Nigerian home I came from, they'll go back, they'll beat you to go back outside.
Yeah, so you have to insist, because, no, these are not given, right? You take it. And by the way, when we act collectively, when people act collectively, it is very difficult to overwhelm the collective actions of the people, when people act collectively. So one of the things that people will tell you, do our votes count, there's manipulation and so on and so on. Maybe there is. But what I can tell you is that manipulation can only exist within limits if the people overwhelmingly move in one direction. The system cannot overwhelm it, and we've seen it in previous elections. when the people are decisive in the direction in which they want to go, no amount of money, no amount of vote buying, no amount can go against that collective will. Now, it should not be the case that for opposition to win or for somebody to win, they have to win by a landslide. So that's not the ideal. But it remains the case that if people decisively move collectively in one direction, these election irregularities that we're talking about will lose their power.
Do we have a stronger system
Today than we did before?
Yes.
Well, I mean, so that question is a bit difficult for me to answer. I think that I would have said, if you asked me this question before the last election, my answer would have been an unequivocal yes, that, yes, we have a stronger system than before. The last election was I think it was a bit of a setback for me in terms of the way I perceived that election. So maybe that was a bit of a step backwards. But having said that, I do think our democracy is advancing. I think it is for us to regroup following what we witnessed in 2023 and then, address ourselves to 2027. And this is not just for us. This is on both sides. This is for us who are active politicians, but it's also for the people who are, at the end of the day, the ones that will make the decision.
So, as an active politician,
Yeah.
tell us a bit about the political system of Nigeria,
Yeah.
because it's 1 minute I'm for this party, the next minute we're cross-carpeting, and then you're like, where's the integrity in all of this? Or is it because there's a lot of vested interest?
So
I'm sorry, you had to hold on before you answer. Just hold on, I'm
okay.
coming.
It's okay.
It's signals, and we're having Funsho Doherty. If you have questions, comments, send us a WhatsApp message 0809-234-5913. I would open the phone line shortly, but send us WhatsApp messages if you have questions or comments. Yes.
So the question of cross-captain, it happens on many levels, right? So first of all, in a democratic society, you will always have people changing political parties.
Okay.
That will always be there. And, to a lesser or to a greater degree, it's a feature of democracy. That's part of the freedom that's associated. But the problem that we see in our own climb is that, it is the motivations that are driving those actions that we have to question. Okay. So a lot of the time, what you will see is a lot of opposition politicians drifting into the ruling party after they've lost elections, right? And, a lot of the time that's because they believe that's where the goodies are flowing from. And of course, the people in the ruling party are happy to receive them and welcome them and even entice them, right? Because, there's enough to go around and they want to weaken the other side as well. So there's that side of it as well. There's a third side, which is a bit of a gray area, which is that our democracy is still evolving. So what happens sometimes is that, and we don't have independent candidacies and so on. So, and we operate something that is called, this is a bit technical, we operate something that is called a first past the post system rather than a proportional representation political system. And what that means in simple terms is that when 3 or 4 people conduct an election, 3 or 4 parties conduct an election, the person who has the most votes, regardless of whether that most votes is only 30-something% of the vote, that person advances, right? So that's how you can have a situation where in a whole state, the entire state assembly is made up of people from one party. Even though if you went and you counted all the people in that state, maybe 30% of the people in that state support other parties. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So if you had a proportional representation system,
It's a game of numbers.
yeah, if you had a proportional representation, you will have at least 30% of that state assembly being made up of minority parties. Do you see what I mean? So because of this, you have a situation where people tend to be drawn into the larger political parties. And it's not just a feature of Nigeria. In many such societies that operate this first past the post system, the system tends towards like a 2-party kind of structure eventually. So that's part of what we see in Nigeria too.
Let's come back to Lagos.
Yeah,
Are you going to run?
certainly.
Okay. So what should we be expecting?
Look, just more of the same, right? So I think that part of the case that we made the last time was that, look, Lagos essentially has been under one administration since 99 in various guises, but one administration. And that the sum total of all of that period of governance has been a culture of extractive rather than inclusive governance. And that over time, what we have seen is that the resources of the state, which are tremendous, by the way, and far more than any other state, have been deployed in such a way that they have benefited the few at the expense of the many. Governance in Lagos has not been inclusive. I'm giving you an overall summary.
Yeah.
And there are many different sort of policy areas we can get into, but this is an overall summary. And we're saying we need to move to a new sort of paradigm where there is inclusive governance, because there's no society that has gone from third world to first world, or that had advanced on the basis of this extractive thing where a few people are wealthy and many people are poor. There's no society. Go and look at all the societies of the world that you can say are developed. None of them will you find this kind of structure. What causes societies to develop is when governance is inclusive, the people prosper. And as the people prosper individually, the society itself prospers. And you have a prosperous society and a prosperous people. And you might have a few poor people, but then the society can then adjust and try and meet the needs of those poor people. And that's the agenda that we'll be pushing. Of course, there are many policy measures that make up that agenda, and we'll get into that.
But what would be the number one?
Yeah.
What would be the number one Funsho Doherty stand? Haven't come from private equity and finance for years, that you need to tackle immediately to get the ball rolling?
I won't say there's one. There are a number of things. One is that we need to tackle education. I believe that education is at the heart. If you think about the population of Lagos and the number of the population that represents young people, the median age in Nigeria is 16 or 17. Think about that. So I believe that education should be free up to secondary school, senior secondary school level. And when I say free, truly free. Not that we say it's free, but they have to pay this fee or pay that fee or what have you, right? So that's number one, for children.
Okay.
Secondly, healthcare for children should be free. Healthcare for children should be free. Then even transportation for children going to school should be free. We should make it free for children to get to school and to be able to learn. We should train our children up to secondary school level, because if we don't, it's going to create a problem for us as a society. These are two. Government reform is another. What do I mean by government reform? When we talk about cost of governance, when we talk about corruption in government, when we talk about all these things, we talk about them as if they are things that are far-fetched and that are intrinsic to us. That's who we are, and we can never have a situation where that does not exist. And it's not true. It's not true. We have gotten used to it. More importantly, sometimes people will come and they ask you, government doesn't have money, or government doesn't have enough money. What you ask yourself is that the money that government has, how is government spending that money that it has? And that's where this whole issue of accountability and corruption comes in. Because if government has 1 million naira, and out of that 1 million naira, in spending that 1 million naira, it gets 200,000 of value, and 800,000 is money for the boys. How can government's money ever be enough? It will never be enough. So you have to tackle the loopholes. You have to fix these leaky buckets, I call it, these baskets that where water is flowing through. And it is in doing this that you bring out the resources that you need to pursue these other policies. Housing is another. Housing in Lagos is a crisis. It's a crisis. And the way you address housing in Lagos is not this kind of incremental actions that the government is taking of building, 100 units here, 100 units there, of, these flats that they build here and there. You need a mass housing strategy.
Are you taking us back to Jaconde's era?
Well, you may want to look at it at Jaconde's era. It may be similar to Jaconde's era because Jaconde built a lot of houses, and it took a quantum approach to it, and that's what we need to do. We're even fortunate today because we have some tools that Jaconde did not have. So, for example, one of the things that we have today is we have long-term money in the system that we did not have. So things like pension savings in trillions and trillions. We have pension savings in trillions of naira, which we didn't have then because we now have a contributory pension scheme. So these are monies that are there. They are invested for the long term. What you need is a government that brings the private sector, creates the environment, provides the guarantees, may produce the land, and create a structure where private capital can fund these large-scale developments. Then you link your housing development to your transportation strategy, right? So that you're not just building housing, but you are building housing that is set in a context within the city that works, right? Because it's linked to transportation links and so on. So the city then becomes a planned, growing city that causes and enables the people living within that society to live a better quality of life, which at the end of the day is what governance is about.
Well, it signals on 91.3 Lagos Talks. If you have questions, comments, 0704 100 7913 or 0704 700 9913. We'll go for this short break, and when we come back, the question continues. Do you need water? Just take one. I can go back a bit.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back. It signals on 91.3. Now we still have Funsho Doherty with us. 0704 700 8913. Now, many say everyone is corrupt, nothing will change. Everybody wants the national cake.
Yes.
Has that national cake not finished?
The national cake it cannot finish because, there's new cake being baked every year, right? So the government makes money every year and all. The question is, how is that money spent, right? And what value do we get for it? And that is where the big problem is. And when you look at, if you take the budget for Lagos State, for example, for this year, it's more than 3 trillion naira. It's more than 3 trillion naira. So think about that's a lot of money, right? And at the federal level, our budget this year is about 50-something trillion, right? Now, a lot of that is borrowed, but the budget is 50-something trillion. We can get into why we are borrowing so much, especially after subsidy has been removed, and that's a whole other line of discussion. But the truth of the matter is that, you see, if you don't spend judiciously, just as a household is the same as a government, if you don't spend judiciously, the money you have can never be enough. And but if you do spend judiciously, then you'll be amazed what you can accomplish with the same level of resources. And I think that, as a nation and as a people, that's what we have to do. This idea that, government is by nature corrupt, or government is by... It is not true. It's not true. It is, it's like, Yoruba say, tewe back peloshe, adoshe, right? That and that's saying like if
No. When Yoruba is struggling.
They say if you
I know my Yoruba is struggling.
So it's saying that if you put leaves within soap for an extended period of time, the leaves themselves will become soap, right? So it's that thing where we have become acculturated and acclimatized to the kind of structure that we are operating. But it's not. You see, all these things, by the way, that we complain about. So somebody sent me a video the other day about just about 2 or 3 days ago. It's the president of Ghana. He was making a speech about a new code of conduct that he was reeling out for his for his government, right? The ministers and so on and so forth. And he went through a whole list of things. You shouldn't have conflict of interest. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't grant contracts to companies that you are the owner of, and so on and so forth. And, I said, well, this is great, but I can tell you for a fact that all these things he's saying, they already exist in the laws of Ghana, if you go and look at it. In the public service rules of Ghana, go and look at it, they are there already. The same thing is true if you go and look at our code of conduct for serving public officers. We have one in Nigeria.
Yes, we do.
If you go and look at the code of conduct for serving public, there is none of these things that you will not find provisions there about. So we don't lack the rules.
We don't just follow it.
We just don't follow it. And if we don't follow it, and if the people in authority don't follow it, they will not insist that those below them should follow it. And it's just a domino effect. Right?
It spirals.
It's spiral. So, and they say the fish heads rods from the top, whatever it is.
Now,
So-
if someone listening wanted to track public spending, how could they even begin?
Well, there are a number of. So this is an interesting question that you asked. There are a number of civil society organizations that are doing some good work in this area. So Budget, which you may be aware of, is one, and they gather a lot of information which people can take a look at. Interestingly, because you bring this up,
Yes.
there was a review that we did sometime last year. I and my team did, which you may
I'm going to do
remember,
Ofofo inside.
where we looked at some of the contract awards of Lagos State government, and we set out some of those things, and it created a lot of interest, became viral, like 10 million views, and people were commenting about money that was being spent on air fresheners and things like that. But and I mean, the idea was not to be sensational. The idea was just to raise certain questions. That this was information that was out in the public domain, and we needed to,
Let people know what's going on.
And by the way, there's a body called the Procurement Bureau. There's a national one and there's the state one.
Is it working?
So that the law that sets it up actually requires that they maintain a journal of the contracts that they award, and that it is published. It is on the basis of that we had the information that we were able to put out in the public domain. Do you know, since you asked the question, that since we have done that work, if you go to the website today, you will not see anything like that. They've removed it. They've removed it. So what does that tell you? Right?
Do we need to educate the people on what they should ask for? Or do we keep dumbing down?
Yeah, no, we don't dumb down. I think we need to keep out there. We need to keep making the case. I see more and more people making the case. I have to tell you, I do.
It's not that bad in itself.
So it's where there is an increasing awareness, but I think it needs to become mainstream. I think what we need for the general population is that we need to give them a hope and a confidence that, things can be different. Because a lot of people don't think that things can be different.
Yes.
They just believe that, well, you know what, let me just do my own thing. Look, you are doing great work here. And I have to commend you for what you are doing in terms of, promoting small businesses, because this is the engine of the society. It's very heartwarming for me that you are giving people the opportunity to promote their business. People are working very hard.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So that guy who is running his solar business, or the guy who is trying to do his cleaning business, is trying to make it, and that thing probably takes 23 out of his 24 hours in a day.
24.
Or 24, right? So on some level I get that, but people also have to realize that perhaps he would not need to work 24 out of 24
If there's a proper system working.
if there's a proper system, there's a proper government, right? And maybe that cleaning business that he's doing, maybe he's actually a chemistry graduate, and maybe what he should be doing is working in a factory, in a large scale industrial enterprise, right? And maybe that's what he's cut out to do. but meanwhile he's struggling with solar business because the economy. You understand what I'm saying? So, not that there's anything wrong with solar business.
Yeah.
On watch, as they say, but but this is just to say that we cannot at the end of at the bottom of everything that we're doing is really governance. All that we're doing, economics, business, and so everything rests on governance. It's like in a ship. Governance is that ship. On the deck of the ship, you have chairs and all of that. We can spend all our time arranging those chairs, but if that ship is going down, those chairs,
never go down.
The chairs are going down.
Now,
so let's focus on the governance.
Now, what kind of Lagos do you envision if true transparency were to be implemented?
Let me tell you.
Tell us.
I'm passionate about Lagos
because I'm sort of this guy.
Eh?
Yeah, it's compulsory.
It's compulsory, yes. Look, you see, Lagos has you are just a blessed city, right? And when we say Nigeria is blessed, Nigeria is truly blessed. But even within Nigeria, Lagos is
extra blessed.
Extra blessed. Now, Lagos has been a commercial capital for centuries. Even though some people will tell you they developed Lagos within the last 25 years.
Any soon, come back.
We'll come back. But it's been a commercial center for centuries. Lagos is one of the, if not the,
Kwakete.
yes, if not the, maybe one of a couple of natural harbors on this bight of Benin, west coast of Africa. Natural harbor. If you come in from where they're now building a coal Atlantic, that's the Atlantic Ocean. You come right into a natural harbor, marina, which is what used to be called Ibeti. And that is where the Apapa port is. It's a natural harbor. It's natural. And, that tells you why it has been a center of commerce for centuries. So we have what many people do not have. We have a large population, many of whom are English-speaking, educated. We have a large market here. We can trade with the hinterland. We can trade with Europe. We can trade with the Americas. So we have so much going for us. What we need is a situation where our resources are managed and brought to the advantage of the majority rather than the minority. Because once that happens, those majority will themselves now become the engine of greater productivity. It's almost like investment versus consumption expenditure, right? It's like if you put money, if the money you spend, if your resources go to the minority, think of it as consuming. But if your resources go to uplift the majority, think of it as investing. Because you are investing in the people who will then drive productivity, and then the society as a whole becomes more productive and everybody becomes wealthy. And Lagos, by the way, if we get this right, Lagos leads, as you know. Where Lagos goes,
everybody follows.
Yeah. So it's really important. And the tragedy, if I can just close with this,
yes.
The tragedy is that because we have so much that we have been endowed with, when those who are managing these resources produce a little, right? Everybody's, it then becomes, you think it's more. But the question is like the parable of the talents, right? So the man who was given 10 talents brought back 10. He didn't bring back 1. If he had brought back 1, I don't think they would have said good servant. Right? He brought back 10. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but our case in Lagos is that we have a lot. We produce a little with the lot that we have. Because it's more than what everybody else has. Then
we loud it.
We loud it, as they say. So,
now, as we come to the final lap, there's something you said about public opinion, and we're in the era of social media, digital technology. How does this enhance our elections? How does it enhance good governance and transparency?
It helps because
it's almost as if the youth are now here.
Yes, they are.
And
here.
we need to Soros, okay?
Yes, you got it. But the part of it is that it helps because people are enlightened. Even uneducated people are more enlightened. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So you have people who they are not necessarily educated in the formal sense, but they have smartphones, they are on
On
Facebook
YouTube,
groups.
WhatsApp,
Yes, if
and they're forwarding messages.
they may not be like messages in the English language, they may be in Yoruba, it may be whatever, but they are aware, they are enlightened, they know what's going on. So that is good, right? Because part of the evil thrives in obscurity and opaqueness, and so this to some extent is helping transparency, because when things happen, before you know it, it's somebody sends out a message,
It spreads.
viral. Did you hear what this man said? Did you see what this man did? When a couple of days ago, when our senator decided to climb on the conveyor of the distinguished senator, with all due respect, but within a short while, everybody saw his image standing on this thing. So I think that this helps because it increases awareness. Awareness is the first step, but we mustn't stop there.
So hold on a second. And speaking of that, because I saw all of that, and the question that came to mind for me was, if we had a working system, we would not need for our senator to be on the podium shouting for accountability. So did we breed what we're experiencing? Because there's one thing for us to, but there's a system. Did we really breed what we saw?
So I don't want to speak about the specifics.
No, just general.
No, I understand. I don't want to speak about specifics because I don't know the full details of it. But what I would say is that whatever the facts of the situation.
Let me explain what I'm looking at.
Okay.
If we had strong institutions, would we have a little bit of chaos like we had if things were properly in place?
Well, you are right. We should not, right? Because
Thank you.
Because you're right. The essentially what you saw play out there was a bit of impunity. In other words, the senator may have been right in terms of maybe he may have been right that the airline was doing something that they ought not to have been doing. I don't know. He may be right, he may be wrong. The airline may be right. I don't know what the answer is. But even if he were, let us assume that he were, right? Those actions are actions that reflect this this attitude by the people who are in control or who believe that they have the power, who believe that they can do and undo, to take actions that it's almost like it's like an I don't know, it's like an authoritarian impunity kind of situation, right? Because even if you are right, there's a way to approach, apart from the personal decorum aspect of it, which is a separate matter. Even if you think you are right, there's a way to pursue it that does not denigrate the rule of law, that does not infringe on the rights of many other people who are using that facility, and so on. So I think that this is all having to do with this placing rule of law, public order, realizing that the leader is subject to the rules, it's not above the rules. And we started this segment talking about that. So I think it's just an example.
One last one. Where do we go from here? 2027 election is here.
Yeah.
What should we expect?
Well, I think that 2027 elections will actually be very interesting.
Okay.
And if you look at what's happening in the political space, if you are somebody who is intuitive or paying attention, yes, you will know that it's going to be quite interesting, because a lot of what you are seeing is the discomfort. Even the ruling party and their
everybody's feeling it.
Yes, even the ruling party and their posturing. By 2 years, you are seeing some posters. By 2 years, people are coming out to endorse and public this thing. Every effort is being made to paint the opposition as weak and all of that stuff. These are all signs that people realize that there's fire on the mountain. When people are comfortable, you won't see them doing this kind of thing. You won't see them doing this kind of thing. So it's telling you that there is people understand that there is a ground swell. And you know what? As I said on a different show the other day, that in my view, this is a government that is big on promises. very poor on delivery on those promises, but that uses intensive propaganda to kind of like overwhelm the
People.
airwaves, right? And most people are not paying attention or don't really care or what have you. But you know, one thing that you can't use propaganda to paper over is people's experience.
People's tummies.
Yes, you know, the man's hunger. You can't eat propaganda out. You know, you can't. And if your child is sick or you lost a child because you know you couldn't take him to the hospital because you didn't have the money or whatever, those things, you know, they are real, and it's everywhere in the world.
Would we ever overcome stomach infrastructure?
We will.
Okay.
If we build an inclusive society, which is what I keep hammering on. If we build a system that is based on inclusive governance, with an inclusive society, we have enough to make people live a reasonable quality of life. We're not trying to make everybody rich. Not everybody wants. They're not even trying necessarily to be rich. Many people they just want to live a comfortable life, educate their children, treat them if they fall ill, marry them off into homes, retire peacefully, and you know, people don't
enjoy your life.
Yeah, that's what people want. And you see it when Nigerians go, when they japa. You understand? You see the lives they live. Do you understand?
The basics are met.
Peace. They go to work. They come back. They raise their children. That's what most people want. You know, that's what most people want.
Okay. And on that note, to an accountable Lagos, where you come. You don't let me start your propaganda, right? Thank you to everyone who's called in, listened in. It's still raining, and I need the rain to stop. Thank you, Arode. Thank you, Dari. And to the gentleman who's worked with us. Till we come your way again next week, Saturday, like we always see on Signals. Dream again, create opportunities for people, because people will be people. Keep creating opportunities. Have a wonderful rainy weekend, and God bless. Coming. Let's hold on. 1 down, 2 to go.